So bad, just a bunch of 能不能说的标准一点？
说谁呢？
Sup everyone, this is Rita, aka 范老师, your accent coach and Chinese teacher. It's happening. Yes, I'm gonna analyze someone whose name has been mentioned in the comments again and again and again. 老马 Chris, 马思瑞, and my husband, in case you don't know. I'm gonna break down some video clips from the past 2 years and see what we can learn and how his Chinese has changed over time. So make sure you watch to the end and subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell too so you don't miss out on any Mandarin tips that you won't find anywhere else. 3、2、1，订阅了吗？ Let's get started.
那最近很多人都在问我是哪儿人，我在中国都干嘛啥啥啥，所以今天我要全部都告诉你们。Let's go.
When you hear someone say 哪儿 instead of 哪里，干嘛 instead of 做什么，and 啥 instead of 什么 you know they've definitely listened to a lot of natives from northern China speaking 北方话, so they've picked up words from the dialect rather than just memorizing what's written in the typical textbooks. It's not so standard per se, but it's what people really use. 厕所在哪儿？你在干嘛？晚上你想吃啥？A friend and a fellow Chinese teacher who has worked at different Ivy League colleges and the best Mandarin programs in the US for over 10 years talked about Chris' Chinese with me the other day. He says, quote, after teaching so many years, I've never seen anyone's Chinese be able to compare with Chris. There actually are, in my opinion, quite a few people who have better expressive ability or can speak more fluently, but his pronunciation is up there. And my friend even watched his video word by word to try to nitpick some quote-unquote super difficult Chinese mistakes. And just like I mentioned a couple of times in my previous videos as well, the second tone versus the third tone might be the most confusing combos because the difference can be really subtle at times. And when speaking quickly, Chris pronounces some of these third tones as second tones.
全部都告诉你们。
全部。
大家可以跟我说一下双语是什么样的？
什么样？
我练了10年的跆拳道。
跆拳道。
我2017年有8个月没有刮胡子，那个时候呢留得特别长。
留得特别长。It's important to know that how you think is pronounced isn't always how natives actually pronounce it. Your intellectual understanding of it is one thing, but your mouth muscle memory is another thing. Keep this in mind and just practice more. And check out this video to see how to differentiate the two tones.
首先呢，基本信息，我是89年的，我是个大叔，80后嘛。
Like I mentioned in Dashen's Chinese analysis video, and also Marco actually used it a lot in our interview too, Chinese natives tend to use a lot of modal particles in the middle of or at the end of the sentences to either soften the tone, give them a little time to think, or to imply some specific emotions and even information.
首先呢，基本信息
Like this, 呢 You might have learned it as a question marker at the end of the sentence to ask a short question of how about something. 我最近挺忙的，你呢？ Or to ask where something is. 我的钱包呢？我的笔记本呢？我老公呢？But in statements, 呢 is often used to pause in the middle of a sentence to emphasize a bit about the subject or the topic of what you are talking about. 我昨天去了一个饭馆，这个饭馆呢真的有点贵。中文呢不算难，只是在最开始的时候要多练习发音和声调。And the 嘛 is usually used to imply that a fact or the reason for something is obvious. Once you state the reason, everyone knows how you end up with that result. 孩子嘛，淘气很正常。最近热死了，夏天了嘛，80后嘛，所以我年纪有点大，我是大叔。And also, the internet's 大叔 use is pretty common on the internet now when talking about any man beyond 30, I guess, or just someone who looks a bit more mature.
我1.80米，然后呢，我是双鱼座。虽然其实我不知道这到底是什么意思啊，大家可以跟我说一下双鱼是什么样的。
I was kind of surprised when someone asked in the last 2 videos if 然后 is a common filler word. It definitely is. When you tell a story or share an experience, or you need a few seconds to come up with what you want to say next, or sometimes people feel reluctant to say something, we use this 然后 maybe too much sometimes for some people. It can become a bad habit for native Chinese speakers, like when a native English speaker uses like all the time.
All of these, make sense. None of them are, wrong. And they, all make you sound, much more like a native.
You can also pay more attention to how Chris uses so many more neutral tones like Beijing locals do, instead of 2 standard tones written in the dictionary or in the textbooks. Listen to how natives really speak, folks. 然后虽然其实不知道然后我是双鱼座虽然其实我不知道这到底是什么意思。By the way, 这 is actually pronounced as J in northern China, or basically just in Putonghua nowadays. Like I said in this video, where I did some in-depth Beijing accent explanation, having many more neutral tones in Beijinghua changes the whole rhythm of our speaking. And it shows more obviously in this sentence with his supernatural word stress, contractions, and 儿化/R coloring sounds.
我今年30岁了，但是呢，其实比较有意思的事就是我爸今年92岁。
In standard Mandarin or textbooks, it'd be pronounced like 我今年30岁了。
我今年30岁了。
但是其实有件比较有意思的事。
但是呢，其实比较有意思的事
就是我爸今年92岁了。
就是我爸今年92岁。
But there's one thing that we can discuss a bit more. Something Chris did and that English native speakers tend to use a lot is the sentence structure, it's adjective that blah blah blah, or it's an adjective thing that blah blah blah. Whereas in Chinese, there's no such a sentence structure, but we tend to say something is adjective, like 这件事儿很有意思 or 有件事儿很有意思就是 blah blah blah.
他61岁的时候生的我，然后我妈已经70了。
I know you might have learned the difference between sentences with 了 and sentences with 是的 in the first few weeks of your Chinese learning. And it's nothing too complicated to understand nor to memorize the sentence structure. But to use them correctly and naturally in different situations is another story, since that requires so much more time to listen to how natives use them and to use them yourselves maybe hundreds or even thousands of times to confirm the meaning as well as the structure. Until then, you might not be so sure or confident enough to use the 是的 structure to emphasize some detailed information of a past event which is already a known fact to the listener and the speaker, like when, where, with whom, or how someone did something. What does that mean? Let's just check out some examples. 你订阅我的频道了吗？什么时候订阅的？你学过中文啊？什么时候学的？怎么学的？在学校学的？还是自己学的？ Did you find the 是的 structure difficult or confusing at all? Let me know in the comments. By the way, if you are enjoying the video, remember to hit like, because it really helps me out. Alright, now let's recap a bit with this paragraph.
我从来不做饭，不管是在外边吃还是点外卖，我觉得在中国实在是太方便了。另外呢，跟吃的相关的，我特能吃拉美血统的，所以呢，不管你是湖南的、贵州的、四川的，估计我都能吃得过你们。
He said 不管 with a second tone instead of 不管。Which is that second and third tone issue we were talking about earlier. And when he says 方便, it's a very full fourth tone in 便, whereas Beijing locals might be more likely to emphasize 方便的方 followed by a more neutral 便 instead of the standard 方便太方便了. But basically, I was just hearing a Beijing boy talking about spicy food in China. And all these details help make his accent sound supernatural in a pretty authentic Beijing accent. 1. The 儿化 and R coloring sounds.
在外边吃。
外边吃。2. Typical contractions. 还是实在是 3. Modal particles. 嘛 and n. 4. Natural emphasis, aka enunciate the syllables with a sort of dramatic tone. 从来 从来。
太方便了。
太方便了。太方便了。
我特能吃辣。
特能吃辣。特能吃辣。5. He uses some not so advanced expressions that most Chinese learners might have learned, but don't often have in their active vocabulary, like 估计 and 吃得过. But when you use them, they just make you sound a lot more 地道, since they are exactly what natives would say. Quick question. Do you think Laoma speaks fast in this video from 2 years ago? He was living in Beijing most of the time back then, and after he left the so-called language environment and came to the US last February, is his spoken Chinese becoming slower or getting worse? Let's see.
What's up, guys？ 我是快乐潘马，所以今天是我居家隔离的第666天。今天我们就继续上一些网课，我报了个普通话的、粤语的，还有意大利语的课。这些老师们其实都看着挺有意思的，所以呢，我要假装自己是个初学者，然后换成说的比较好的那一瞬间，老师们会有什么样的一个反应
？Well, apparently he speaks even faster now. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the faster someone speaks, the better they speak the language. Because if you speak fast, but everything you say is filled with pronunciation, tone, word choice, and grammar mistakes, it just causes even more confusion to the people you are speaking to. By the way, 瞬间 is with the first tone. He just gets that wrong all the time.
然后换成说的比较好的那一瞬间。
But if you actually spend a lot of time training and perfecting your pronunciation enough that you can speed up a bit, and you have a good feeling for the contractions and the rhythm of sentences when you speak fast, your Chinese just gives natives chills. Like,
oh my god, 你個口音好北京，我打冷震。
But how did this happen? How could he keep improving while he is far away from China? I've definitely dragged him onto my channel to sit down and chat with me about how he has been learning and practicing. Let me know what question you'd want to ask and stay tuned. Anyway, in this prank video where he pretended he's a beginning Chinese learner, then switched into a nearly native Chinese speaker, there actually are some difficult sounds that Chris tried to imitate, and therefore we know what we can work on and improve a bit. Especially if you are an American learning Chinese. 1. Differentiate 吱吱吱 versus 叽叽叽. Pay attention to your tongue position, where the tip of your tongue is, and the shape of your lips.
你长得不太是美国人啊。
我像哪里？
我像哪里？我像哪里？
我喜欢来拍视频。
喜欢。喜欢。
睫毛。
睫毛。睫毛。2. Try to learn the tones right in the first place.
我的朋友叫我Laoma.
我的朋友叫我老马。老妈。老马。3. Differentiate u versus ü.
我喜欢来拍视频，英语视频。
我喜欢拍英语视频。我喜欢拍英语视频。4. Differentiate o versus 我。
我的朋友说。
我的朋友说。我的朋友说。说收多都左走。5. Practice the tones of each syllable and how they connect together instead of using your native language intonation for the whole sentence.
我是美国人。
I'm American. 我是美国人。我是美国人。And I received a lot of messages on Instagram and also some students that I've been tutoring asking, should I learn an accent or just 普通话? And my answer is always, it depends on your learning goals. If you have decided which Chinese-speaking regions you are gonna live in, or you have a specific dialect group of people to communicate with in Chinese, then just go for the target accent so that you can facilitate communication. But if you don't have such a certain accent-related goal, I suggest you learn 普通话 first, because then you'll be able to differentiate all the sounds in Chinese that can differentiate meanings no matter which dialect area you're in. Some Chinese dialect speakers might not differentiate 吱吱吱 and 滋滋滋. Some dialects don't differentiate h and f, or in and ing, or l and n, etc., etc. Even I found it hard at times since I started wearing Invisalign. But no matter what their mother tongue is, they all would understand your standard Mandarin perfectly. If you really want to dive into the Beijing accent, Chris actually made a video where he took a Beijing dialect test, and he shared some rules of thumb of Beijing accent from his observation and experience. Like
这就可以变成一个 y， 然后这个之变成日。大家好，不知道。
To be honest, if you do listen closely to how natives speak like he did, you can learn any accent pretty well. Now, I've been teaching Chinese long enough and know the best of best Mandarin teachers in the US and in China. And I've heard a lot of feedback and comments from them as well. Laoma Chris Chinese is just one of the best non-native Chinese speakers who started learning as an adult. He obviously still makes mistakes, and he'll be the first to admit that. And he always says that anyone can do it too. But the point of this video and any other Chinese analysis videos on my channel is never to insult or praise an individual Chinese learner's current Chinese level, but to help all serious Chinese learners see how to improve and where to work on. That's the best appreciation and help that I can give to all your learners trying to learn this unique language. Language learning is not rocket science, and everyone can get Chris Chinese level as long as you put in time, constantly practice with a more effective learning method. If you enjoyed the video, remember to hit like, subscribe to see more. And remember, with Fan 老师, Chinese makes perfect sense. See you in the next video.
His Chinese is so poor, is very shit. He must practice more and more every day.